sometimes Bob would demonstrate using the Sonic 6, wouldn't he? Where would he be doing that? In more trade shows or?
Yeah, I mean, after all, Bob was the Moog of Moogs.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he would draw people. However, I must tell you, in those days, those early days, anybody would draw people. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man was definitely king. I would go to Denmark and there would be hundreds of people there. I would go to Italy and same thing. As a matter of fact, Bob and I one time went out to Alamo Music in San Antonio, Texas, USA. And I was on radio 3 times that morning, and Bob was on TV twice that morning. That's how much the media was into this. This was such a new thing that it was like worthy of covering. Nowadays, it's like, okay, you're having a clinic for the Belch Fire 8. Who cares? You know, it's one of 100. In that time, people were so hungry for information. It was a mob scene at the store. They had to lock the door to keep anybody else from coming in, and having the fire marshal just turn. Of course, they should have turned it down for the door being locked, but they were afraid that the fire marshal would stop the whole thing. The store was jammed, and it was a big store. And Bob did a shtick. I did a shtick. There were people pressing their ears against the glass of the outside windows. And an amazing era, which other clinicians, I'm sure, would tell you. You know, Mike Bridget, my colleague, who was an ARP clinician, a number of people, would tell you, yeah, there was this excitement about everything and this energy. And after all, I mean, my God, we were only playing with sawtooths and stuff, you know. It wasn't near as sophisticated as present day conditions. But there was this energy that we seem to lack now about the entire enterprise.
How did Moog and the people who worked for Moog relate to, say, ARP?
Well, they were the enemy, to the extent that all of your competitors, quote, are your enemies. On the other hand, the personal relationships were quite warm. I can't vouch for between Mr. Perlman, ARP, Alan R. Perlman, and Robert Moog. I don't know what that relationship was like. Between me and Mike Brigida, who is one of the illustrious and powerful ARP demonstrators, of which there were several, and at one time there was only me for Moog, there was a respect and a friendship that was quite nice. It was a pitched battle, but when a Kinsey consultant, or McKinsey, I can't remember which one of these consulting firms, that Norland, who eventually owned Moog, hired to say, well, what could we do, you know, to be more successful? He just dismissed ARP. Oh, well, don't worry about them. They're not competition. And I couldn't buy that at first. I didn't understand enough about business to realize that, yeah, ARP was severely undercapitalized. I wouldn't have even thought about what that meant. And they indeed went out of business. They tried to make a guitar synthesizer that really was the death of them. Where the interplay between design, artistry, and industry considerations is extremely interesting. Some of the kind of bean counters at ARP had taken note. Well, there's 13 million guitarists and only 2 million keyboard players. We should build a guitar synthesizer. Now, Bob Moog and I say single-handedly, there were 2 of us, almost single-handedly kept the Moog company, when it was under Norland, from getting into the guitar synthesizer market. Why? Well, I knew what my complaints were. First of all, why would you take this wonderful instrument, an electric guitar, where it's in your hands and subject to hammer-ons and, you know, all of the detail and the nuance that you could do with your fingers, you know, and make it go drive an oscillator that goes, eh. Why would you do that? Not only that, guitar players are a different breed of cat than keyboard players. I mean, compared to guitar players, keyboard players are Einstein. They're, you know, they're up here in their heads. You know, I mean, you only see philosophical guitar players in This Is Spinal Tap, you know, Nigel Tufnell. So, different breed of cat, different psychographics. All the ARP company knew at that juncture was demographics. The psychographics were all wrong. The technology was all wrong. The way it transduced the pitch. You strike a guitar string, it's a mess. You don't know what frequency it is. It takes a while for it to sort of settle down. And you're trying to sense this thing that will go and give a note number to MIDI. Dreadful. And even pre-MIDI, the pre-MIDI versions had the same problem. So you only had a few of those things that came to light, like
There was the Slave Driver, wasn't there?
yeah, there was another British one, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, played by Alan Holdsworth. The Synthaxe.
Oh, yeah.
But what did the Synthaxe do? Well, it obviated some of those problems, technical problems. First of all, there weren't any strings to transduce.
Yeah.
It was just like a fretboard that was like a keyboard.
Yeah.
Useful for a guitar player, and he played it wonderfully, wonderfully, virtuosically. But the thing was like $20,000 or something. So that's why I say the industry, aesthetics, and the technology, you have to be thinking about all of those at the same time to make a real impact in the industry. And that's why I say many people had prototypes before Bob Moog, but nobody had an archetype for what an industry would become. It was Bob Moog, pure and simple. And I'm a historian of that stuff, so I hope I know.